I talk a little bit about quantum physics, and in rule number 17, I talk about what's known as the law of balance, which you can find elsewhere. I didn't think this up, but it's something that's been immensely comforting for me as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a friend to people, which is to understand that nothing is good or bad, right or wrong, but it is just a question of perception. So we perceive things as being right or wrong, but we don't see the benefits of everything that we think is wrong or the downsides of everything that we think is right.
This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation.
Hi guys, my name is Kądzielska-Koper and this is Common Sense Generation. And this episode is especially targeted to all parents because with me is Patrick Ney, a coach in parenting and an author. Patrick, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, well, you have so many roles that from being a great video maker and a historian, you became also a specialist in parenting, which is surprising. But as you mentioned to me before, you specialize in the past and now you want to look into the future. And looking, of course, children are our future. But in those times, having children is an act of courage, it seems like. Because whenever I read the headlines of very popular newspapers, they're always against the parenting and the parenthood. It's like, oh, those traumas of being a mother, all of those tears that come and depression which comes through it. I mean, I'm a mother, what they're talking about.
Yeah, people talk a lot of crap about parenting, and usually it's people who don't have kids who like to tell parents how they should parent. So there is this narrative, meta-narrative going on that parenting's tiring and it costs lots of money and it stops you from having your personal freedom. Yeah, I agree. Of course it does. But have you thought about the upsides? Like becoming a father or a mother is, and almost every father or mother I've ever spoken to will say this. You know, it's like, yes, of course it's tiring, but it's also the most rewarding thing you will ever do. I mean, your child comes out, which is kind of a cool thing in of itself because it's such a human thing to do. Like
and
such
it's homemade.
Mammalian thing to do is unbelievable. You know, like we're so close to evolution then. Everything in your life changes straight away. As a father, as a mother, everything you thought was important before no longer becomes important. Your career, your travel, who cares about all of that? You can do that and have a kid. And then you feel that moment, for example, 3 months in when they smile at you for the first time. And there's a love inside you which is far more powerful than any freaking holiday you'll ever go on, any material plastic thing you'll buy yourself. None of those things outlive you. Your children will outlive you, and the decisions and the things you say to them will live far beyond you and go on to echo in history. You know, we talk about living lives of meaning. I don't want my life, the life that I lead, to be defined by the holidays I go on and the plastic things I buy for myself. I'd much rather invest that time and money in my kids. Now, I don't judge anyone who hasn't had a kid or even chooses not to, or even someone who pretends that their dog or their cat is going to be some kind of pseudo kid. I get it. I understand. But I also feel very sorry for people who wake up at 40, 42 and go, oh my God, I actually realized that this is the thing that's missing in my life. And for many women, for lots of different reasons, and men, it can be too late. And that's sad. And that's happening as well.
And you started treating all parenthood very seriously because one thing is just doing it yourself and observing and learning all the psychological impacts and elements which come with parenting, but also you look at it from more scientific point of view. And that's the result in your book, When in the Zoo,
Watch the Humans.
Watch the Humans. 18 rules. And a lot of them based on the neuroscience. Yes. So we don't want, of course, to summarize it right now on this podcast, but just the fact that you do it so seriously and you're not only based to one country, but you did a lot of travel to because parenting is universal. Having children is universal, and humanity have to do it all over the world.
Yes. I'm very blessed to be a parenting trainer with All About Parenting, which is a global parenting organization, like 30 plus countries. And I've been doing it for more than 5 years, working with mums and dads individually and with groups and hosting hundreds of meetings with parents, workshops as well. and it's been very rewarding. Now, I don't do it because I know something better than them. I do it because I don't know anything. I'm a dad. And when you become a parent, you discover that they don't come with any, instructions. You have to all make it up as you go along. And that journey in of itself is beautiful because, as I often say to parents, it's not us helping children to grow up. It's our children helping us to grow up. And you discover so much more about yourself when you become a father or a mother. I've been on that journey too. So I decided to become a parenting trainer because I also wanted to be a better dad and a better husband to my wife, Maya, for my 2 daughters, Mia and Zofia. Now, I wouldn't want to ask them how well I'm doing, but I hope it's better than I had if I hadn't been learning parenting. And that's what we do at All About Parenting. We teach parents, how to have rules and boundaries. Not something a lot of people know about. When should you be standing in for your kid and when shouldn't you be? Why is it they're having these meltdowns or these tantrums? And why is it that for us, it's really hard to handle our emotions? A lot of that comes back into our childhood. So issues around behavior, psychology, motivation, neuroscience, those are the things that interest me. And I do really like to take a brain-informed approach because, we're starting to discover how much of the lives we lead can make us feel unhappy, sad, lonely, depressed. And actually, if we take positive steps, if we change our diet, if we move more, if we work on our past, if we spend more time connecting with other people, if we put the damn phones down, it actually turns out that all of a sudden, boom, we feel happier, we feel healthier, we lead longer, more productive lives. And this is, I think, what we're all looking for, we have more love in our relationships. And that's what I want with my kids, and that's what I love sharing with other parents.
This love which comes with parenting is absolutely amazing as you said. And the other thing is that you need to find the strength, but it comes somehow that you have a responsibility, but also a great friend in a new creature with like this timeline of this creature is much longer, at least potentially, than yours. That he or she will be here when you are not anymore. So of course it is, if we have 2 forms of immortality, and one is in our actions and what we create, but the other obvious one is in our children, and we so often forget about it. But as you mentioned, setting boundaries, and in our conversation you also said about the fact that we have to give children this safety and this feeling of being close to us. Is it a way of also fighting all forms of depression? Because you look at teenagers and you see them that suddenly they all have all those problems. So where does it come from? Is a way of resolving it, giving them more love and security?
Well, for sure, one thing I would definitely recommend to all parents, we were talking about as well, you've got a beautiful 2-year-old daughter, is to really focus, especially in those early years, not on baby Mozart and trying to teach them to read at 2 or 3. Those are ridiculous cognitive things, but just to focus on the sense and feeling of safety. And I use the word sense deliberately because a child perceives safety through their relationship with mum and dad and other people, co-parents, whoever it needs to be. But it needs to be someone who's there consistently, giving them signals of safety through touch, the hugs that we give, through smell. There's nothing better than smelling your child, right? Your child smelling you at the same time. And the child's sense of smell works from day one, which is why after they're born, we place them on mum's chest, not only to breastfeed and learn that behavior, but also to get that sense of smell from mum as well. So we now know, based on neurodevelopmental studies going back now decades, that if a child is deprived of this sense of safety, then it effectively screws them up. It doesn't have to be for life, but many of the abilities socially, emotionally, developmentally to integrate into wider society and function within wider society are going to be damaged. That's absolutely the case. We know that to be true. So it therefore stands to reason that if we focus on the sense of safety and security, we're going to see a child who's better able to integrate into the wider world. Because first you feel that sense of safety, I'm loved and I'm capable of loving others with mum and dad. And then you get to go out into the wider world. I have friends, I'm loved by those friends, and then I can give love and create love with my partner. It's a process that we all go on. Now, if we were going to get into the nuts and bolts of the neuroscience of it, we'd be here all day. But there's been a lot of tiger parenting literature out there, and I think a lot less emphasis on this idea of safety, and that's definitely one message that I love to share. Now, I didn't get this always right when I first became a dad, but it's something I've definitely discovered, and I try and focus on as much as possible.
So you are also an advocate of, for example, breastfeeding.
Yes.
For all of those reasons, as you said. So the being close, the smell, and of course the immune system, which is strengthened by breastfeeding. So, okay, one thing to do this, have the children close to us. But when they become bigger, and I'm still not yet there, and for example, they become aggressive. Even my 2-year-old sometimes approach someone who she loves very much and slap him or her in the face.
Yes.
Where does it come from?
That's a great question. Do you have aggression inside you?
Once again?
Do you have aggression inside you?
Definitely.
Are you an aggressive person?
I mean, every one of us has some form of aggression.
Me too. Now, we act as parents as if children shouldn't be aggressive. But actually, if their lives are in danger and they were on their own and they had to fight for their survival, we'd be glad that they could be aggressive. Aggression is not a bad thing prima facie. Okay? It's actually something we all have inside us. It's a mechanism that hundreds of thousands and millions of years of evolution have designed inside us to survive. So within our search for safety and security is also an implicit desire for survival, which keeps us going. You know, the human race wouldn't have survived very long if it couldn't fight. So there's a lot of long-term data into human aggression. Boys are more aggressive than girls for obvious reasons. The most dangerous time to be a human being is to be in a group of 2-year-olds. You're going to have at least one in every 4 of them using aggression every single day. But more than half of kids at that age are going to be using aggression in some form or manner. And only 1/4 are going to be using it hardly at all. And that tends to be more girls, but not always. Aggression works. You get what you want when you aggressively pull the toy that you want from the kid out of the other person's hands. So we need to be a little bit careful about what we're saying to our children. Like, don't hit. Well, actually, there's contexts in which hitting is quite fine. One is survival, but the other is play. All mammals play, and all mammals play fight. Horses, alligators, or any kind of animal you look at it, they're all lions, tigers, they all play fight. Because again, we talked about the sensory system. We need to interact with the environment around us, and our development doesn't come, our brain's not operating separately from our body. This is something I think a lot of people don't know because they haven't looked at the neuroscience. Like, we need our body in order for our brain to develop. If we were deprived of our senses, our brain wouldn't develop in any way like the form that it does. And play fighting is something that we absolutely need. So hitting is not wrong or right, depending on the context. My kids hit me during play, but I'm teaching them not to hit me in any other kind of time because I haven't given my agreement to it. Now, you also have this question of what's right and wrong. Can a 2-year-old know that when they hit someone, it's wrong? Well, again, as parents, we're like, you shouldn't do that, say sorry. Well, when you ask a 2-year-old to say sorry, you're imagining that they're capable of understanding that their behavior is wrong, which is cognitively very, very difficult indeed. A lot of adults have a problem with that. That also they're capable of understanding that that other person felt something when they did it. Now, there's a lot of debates around how a 2-year-old would imagine the world, but nobody believes that a 2-year-old is cognitively, so in the thinking way, capable of going, that person has feelings and emotions like me. That's a process which emerges over time through their interaction with other people. So it's not that I would say, like, forget about it, don't worry about it. In that situation, I would gently direct a child and say, hey, we don't hit other people, except when we're playing. But I also wouldn't harm my child, hurt them or embarrass them or shame them for doing it either, because it's an age-dependent kind of behavior. It'd be a very different conversation if you had a 7 or 8-year-old doing that.
Very interesting, and also important to know. So out of all 18 rules, which you have them, just tell us one, and which you want to share, like a bit of it. Why, for example, things which people very often forget about.
Well, my book, When at the Zoo, Watch the Humans, available on Amazon right now, globally, ebook as well, audiobook coming soon, does have, as you say, 18 rules, inspiring rules, I think, for parents. Kind of hard for me to pick the one that's like, there's so many good ones, I'm in danger of saying that. I talk a little bit about quantum physics, and in rule number 17, I talk about what's known as the law of balance, which you can find elsewhere. I didn't think this up. but it's something that's been immensely comforting for me as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a friend to people, which is to understand that nothing is good or bad, right or wrong, but it is just a question of perception. So we perceive things as being right or wrong, but we don't see the benefits of everything that we think is wrong or the downsides of everything that we think is right. So I use this as a model when I work with parents, but I also use it for myself. Whenever I say, I'm angry about something, what I'm perceiving is that that situation is bad and that it shouldn't be. Well, what about if that situation should be? Like, what are the positives of that situation? And when you ask yourself that question, if you do the work and think about it, you start to feel differently. So I go into, in rule number 17, about how the law of balance is everywhere. It's in both the neuron, so the brain cell, a specialized cell within the brain. It's also within the sun. There's a polarity within the sun. There's positive and negative, and interestingly, they flip round. I just had a meeting with my wife yesterday where we were talking about the things that we liked when we were first together and now things that annoy each other in our relationship. So I believe the mind has amazing capacity to reinvent reality, and I talk about that in other rules, and to see the world differently. And I do think we have a crisis in anxiety, in depression, in stress, slightly exacerbated by social media and the constant emphasis on emotions. And within the book, I am trying in different ways for us as parents to feel a little bit lighter about our role, to relax a little bit, to understand that everything that we think is bad is actually good, that we're not screwing up our kids any more than our parents screwed us up. In fact, screwing our kids up is part of the journey, that there is nothing wrong with our children, that we don't need to sign them up to a psychologist to get a label. I talk about that inside the book, or even medication that comes with it, because our child is perfect just as they are, a human being, both flawed and amazing, both perfect and imperfect. You know, I've just been thinking about a Latin phrase from the poet Terence from the 2nd century BC. Nihil humanis e ad alienum puto. Nothing that is human is alien to me. And that's the strongest message that comes through the book, you know, just to accept the entirety of humanity. It sounds pretty big. It's an easy read. There's lots of stories in there. But that's really something that more than anything else has comforted me as a father in my journey.
This is Common Sense Generation. If you like this channel, please subscribe, share, and comment. Your voice really matters.
So just the fact that, first of all, accepting we are human beings and we don't have this imperative to be perfect all the time. Very interesting to hear from you, and just also seeing the fact how much work you did not only to understand parenthood in order to do it, understanding the world, because after all, having kids is such a huge part of the whole world. All creatures, living creatures, have children if they want to, if this is their primary goal. And in our nature, this is also human primary goal. We want to survive in this world, and that's how we want to have children. We very often forget that it's actually, what was surprising for me as a mother was how actually fulfilling it is. How all of this described as it will make me less able to work, it will make less profitable, let's say, or I will have less energy or less opportunity to go places. All of this very often bullshit, especially in comparison, how important those other things become, and how also giving you this feeling of fulfillment. And this is something which especially young women very often don't hear, that they will be fulfilled in their role, and this is nothing shameful about it. It's actually amazing, because no other person will be like your child.
Yes, I mean, I kind of wish I'd been a father earlier, because it turns out that spending time with my kids is more rewarding than anything else. I don't judge men or women who go back into their careers, but I do think that we were sold a lie, or we were certainly told a story, which is your career is going to be more important than your family. You can wait with your family because your career comes first. And again, I know some mothers who've gone on to have amazing careers, and I also know some people who chose not to have kids who've gone on to have amazing careers. Look at what the nurses and the doctors who work with people at the end of their lives say. They say that people never really talk about their work. Like, no one goes, I wish I'd earned more. but you don't take your money with you to the grave. I wish I'd spent more time at the desk. No company cares about you anymore. You stop working for them, they forget you the next day. People say, I wish I'd spent more time with my family, and I wish I'd spent more time with my friends. Like, come on, guys, we're not going to reinvent evolution here. That's what's most important, And I talk about in my book, let's take our place in the circle of life. The providing of life and the continuation of life, receiving and giving the gift of life. Like, through my own work in neuroscience and quantum physics, like just starting to understand about what a precious gift we've been given, and rolling this idea of gratitude for just existing on this planet right now, and to be able to pass that gift on as well with the implicit promise of death to that person that we create. It's such an amazing thing that if we took our foot off, if we stopped going on the hamster wheel for 5 seconds and just stopped and thought about the miracle of creation, it would overwhelm us. God is bigger than the human mind can even understand. And that is something which almost makes my spine tingle as I think about it, like my arms start going up. Fine, let's have rewarding careers and let's travel, but let's not kid ourselves either. Ain't nothing like having a kid on this planet.
Well, it's beautiful what you said, but let's make this conversation even more controversial. And you being a British, it's not important in this case, but important is the fact that we look at life as a value, but also something, as you mentioned, the beauty which is beyond us. It's the gift of life is something which passed through us, but it's not actually we who give it. I at least had this experience.
Yes.
It was not me who is, after all, creating all this human being. It comes through me, but it comes, in my opinion, through God. So, and then you have this rate of abortion, and you have this, especially in UK, when you talk to young women. I had this experience myself, and when they, next to the pint of beer, say, I had 5 abortions. Well, I'm treating abortion as a form of anticonception.
Yes.
And it was a shock for me. But it, again, comes from something which we talked from the previous episode, but from putting the value of freedom as an ultimate, the most important value. And I understand there are cases where when the life of human being is not the biggest value. For example, war. We go to war when we think that the safety of our country is bigger than the value of an individual human being. But this has been brought to this extent that a pill, and I'm not even saying the anticonception pill, but abortion pill becomes something so easy to get, especially in US and in UK, that it is blowing my mind.
Yes. Well, I mean, one way to look at this conversation is just the statistics of it. So I believe in the UK, we're talking about a couple of 100,000, maybe 150,000 abortions a year. Don't fact check me on that, but it's certainly north of 100,000. So within 10 years, that's 1 million. That's a lot of people, that's a lot of potential people that could have been born that weren't. I don't judge anyone who made that decision. For most people, I think it's a difficult decision. But it's true that culturally in that kind of country, there is this idea that, hey, no biggie, worst case scenario, you can have an abortion. As I said, I don't judge anyone in that situation. We all in our own way reject life in different ways. You've mentioned war is one way of it. But I have to say that I'm certainly grateful for the gift of life myself, and I think it's a beautiful thing. The way I try to think about it is through all the spiritual work that I've done, not just through Protestantism and Catholicism and Christianity, but looking at other disciplines and fields, is that there's God inside us as well. Like, we are God. This idea that God exists within us is something which I think is very, very powerful. Not to make us feel pumped up or full of pride or anything like that, but just to understand that there is something quite miraculous about our existence and our ability to pass that existence on as well. And for every life that's missed, there'll be a potential parent there one day, I hope. But again, speaking to those people who think it isn't worth it, there's nothing, in my opinion, more valuable than passing on that gift of life. At the end of our days, we'll cherish the fact that we have that person by our bedside, not to look after us, but just because that is the continuation of something that's far bigger than our own individual existence. And yeah, the UK does have this culture right now. It's a cultural thing, I think. And again, it's about what kind of society do we want to be. But there ain't no votes in the UK for questioning that culture, I don't think. So it's probably not likely to change.
Elements of culture which grows also further than in the borders, because there's a huge responsibility in an English-speaking culture because it's universal. It's because English is a language of the whole world, and it's a modern Latin. So whatever what happens in the British American culture, it expands over the borders,
yes.
And it affects also cultures in different countries. So that's why I'm so, let's say, picky and criticizing, and people in the other parts of the world can do it because we take part in it. Most of the world takes, at least as a consumers, take part in, let's say, Anglo-Saxon culture, yes. Even through just, let's say, films, but also the canon of books. And if anything's happened in this culture, it inevitably affects the rest of the world. That's why when we look at what happens there, we can see it's going to be in other countries very soon as well. And why to criticize is why to look at it. And from at least a perspective of a parent, but also as a Christian, but also as a woman, is that we are fed with this lie, especially young women, that making an abortion will not make you a mother. And I do think, when I talked especially to women who had an abortion, they are still mother of a child who was not born. And in the back of their hand, when they're in a moment of honesty, they're saying, you know what, I have this picture of from the first, the first visit to a doctor which I took, and I still have them on my phone, and I never deleted it. And I'm still thinking that there is somewhere there. And very often it's a cultural decision, and very often it's a decision made by men to women. And then this gift of life, but all the journey which you describe and all the future, potential future, is cut. And it's never ever going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Well, again, I don't like to judge someone in that situation. I believe they made the decision which they perceived to be the rational one and the one that benefited them at that particular time. It's a fact, I believe, that when a mother hears the heartbeat of the child who they're potentially considering having an abortion on, I think more than half of them then go on to decide not to have an abortion. So that tells you probably enough, which is when you perceive there's life there. And
heartbeat, you can hear it at the 7 weeks.
Very early on, yes.
Very
early enough that there's time within that typical abortion frame to reconsider your decision. So that tells you probably enough. When you can perceive this other individual as being a human being capable and worthy of life and continuation of life, you're far more likely to change your mind. So yeah, culture. Culture is a set of ideas which are held by more than one person, you know. And I think we've started to come in the last 20 years into a little bit more understanding that not everything that happened in the 60s with liberation and freedom for everyone, not everything was all good. There are also downsides. We talked in conversations before about every conversation, every decision you have has pluses and minuses. It's been this theme we talked about today. And yeah, there's downsides which we're starting to perceive. And male and female roles have shifted considerably. I see, for example, women who chose not to have a kid who are very sad about that decision now because they decided to put their career first. So there's both the collective and the individual discussion to be had here. For the collective one, I mean, the stats for me, if you look at the UK, are kind of horrifying, right? Like 100,000 a year, like that, surely no one wants that. Like we don't want to be in that situation, even if we defend the right for a woman to choose to have an abortion with or without the man involved. That doesn't seem to me to be an optimal situation whatsoever.
And it's also the effects of demographics when you look at the statistic, and we just as let's say Western world, declining. In this case, the rest of the world is definitely their demographic is much higher, and looking at this million people who we just disappear. Could be just potential, let's say,
definitely one of the answers.
Citizens.
Yeah.
This is let's even not pragmatic, as for a just very, let's say, reasonable point of view, because after all, we're talking here about common sense. So it seems like lack of common sense.
It's not always as common as it used to be.
And having kids, after all, it seems like, in fact, a lot of common sense in it. You have a best friend who grows, someone who is so similar to you. And you also have this beautiful project of another who grows with you and outlive you.
Yeah, so to all those people who say kids are tiring and they take up your money, yes, exactly. But you get to grow this little creature, as you said, and it's the most gorgeous thing. And you'll discover inside you an ocean, a well of love that you never had for anything or any person before. No offense to our partners, right? But we love our children even more than we love our partners, even more than we love our family. And the immense feeling of love within us when our child comes to us to hold us, or when they cuddle us after we've had an argument, when they write that little note, as my daughter did the other day, saying, "I love you, Daddy," you know, all the pain, all the sacrifice, all the things we had to, quote, give up, like, come on, man, they're nothing in comparison to that moment.
Well, Patrick, thank you very much for saying all of this. And again, I remind when at the zoo, watch
The Humans.
Watch The Humans.
Available on Amazon.
Patrick Ney on Common Sense Generation. Guys, thank you very much for watching us. I do hope you enjoyed this. And again, I thank the Polish National Foundation for making this video podcast possible.
This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation.